My grandmother bequeathed to me a dilapidated house in the countryside, and to my brother, a three-room apartment in the capital. My husband called me a failure and kicked me out. I went to the village, and when I entered the house, I was stunned. Before we continue, please tell me which country you are watching this video from. Enjoy listening. The air was thick with a palpable tension. Olga felt it intensify with every beat of her heart, constricting her chest. The notary's office was stuffy, smelling of old paper and a musty scent, as if only the shadows of the past inhabited it. The lawyer, a gaunt man in a sharp suit, cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began to read the will of Maria Stepanovna, their grandmother. Anton, Olga's older brother, sat beside her, lounged back in his chair with an air of ease. A self-satisfied smirk played on his lips. He had always been Grandma's favorite, a successful businessman living in the capital. Olga, in contrast, seemed like a mere shadow against his brilliance, quiet, modest, working as a librarian. She had always felt undervalued, as if her existence was merely a backdrop to her brother's vibrant life. The apartment located at address I bequeath to my grandson, Anton Sergeyevich. The lawyer's voice was monotonous, as if he were reading a verdict. Anton raised an eyebrow victoriously, casting a fleeting, almost contemptuous glance at Olga. She, meanwhile, tried to maintain her composure, though a storm raged within her. She knew her grandmother loved Anton, but still, she had hoped for at least some measure of fairness. And the house, situated in the village of Zarechi, along with all outbuildings and land plot, I bequeath to my granddaughter, Olga Sergeyevna. Olga felt the blood drain from her face. Zarechia village, an old, semi-ruined house, of which she remembered almost nothing. She had only been there as a child, very young. This had to be some misunderstanding, a mistake. What would she do with this crumbling dwelling? Anton burst into laughter. Well, you got some consolation after all. You could have stopped hoping Grandma would leave you anything worthwhile. What will you do with this wreck? Chop firewood? Olga remained silent, unable to find words. Resentment choked her like a snake. She felt humiliated and insulted. Why had Grandma done this? Did she truly consider her so worthless that she left her only an old house in a remote village? After the will was read, everything happened very quickly. Anton, pleased with himself, hurried away, calling out as he left, "Don't forget to sell that dump or the taxes will kill you." The lawyer handed Olga the documents and the keys to the house. She left the office as if in a fog. Waiting for her outside was Igor, her husband. He was grim and irritated. "Well, what is it?" he asked, without even a greeting. Olga told him about the will. Igor listened, his brow furrowed deeper and deeper. When she finished, he exploded. "A house in the village? Are you serious? Olga, can't you do something useful just once in your life? You always bring problems. An apartment in the capital. That's a chance. And you? You got some junk. You're just unlucky, a failure." Igor's words wounded her more deeply than Anton's mockery. She had always tried to be a good wife, supporting him in everything, but he had never appreciated her, always reproaching her for her weakness and inability to earn money. "Igor, please," she attempted to defend herself, but he cut her off. "Enough. I'm tired of you and your uselessness. Pack your things and leave. I'm sick of carrying you." Olga felt the world collapsing around her. She was left alone, penniless, unsupported, with the keys to an old house in a remote village. Tears welled up, but she held them back. She wouldn't let him see her weakness. Gathering her belongings, Olga left the apartment they had rented together. She didn't know where to go, what to do. Only one thought echoed in her mind: to get as far away from this place, from this deceit, from this betrayal as possible. Without much deliberation, she bought a bus ticket to Zareki. She didn't care what awaited her in this god-forsaken village. She just needed to escape, hide, start anew. The journey was long and arduous. The bus jolted over the potholes. Gray landscapes flashed past the window. Olga stared out, trying to distract herself from her dark thoughts. She remembered her grandmother, her kind eyes, her quiet voice. Perhaps in this old house, there was something that would help her understand herself. find her path in life. As the bus pulled into Zarechi, dusk was settling. The village greeted her with silence and desolation. Houses stood leaning, their paint peeling. It seemed as though time had stopped here. Olga stepped off the bus and looked around. In the distance, she saw the old house, surrounded by an overgrown garden. It looked gloomy and unwelcoming, gray, shabby, as if abandoned by everyone. Dragging her suitcase with difficulty, Olga trudged towards the house. Her heart pounded anxiously in her chest. She felt insecure and alone. What awaited her in this old house? Could she find any meaning in life here? Olga slowly circled the house. From the outside, it appeared a sad specter of the past, neglected and forgotten. Peeling paint, crooked shutters, an overgrown yard, everything screamed of desolation. She expected to find the same scene inside, but to her surprise, the house was clean and tidy, as if someone had maintained order, despite the apparent lack of life. There was no sense of abandonment, rather, as if the house was simply waiting for its time. The rooms smelled of dust and old wood, but not dampness. The furniture, though old, was sturdy and well-maintained. Yellowed photographs hung on the walls, their frames capturing faces of people Olga had never seen. She felt the history of this family, her family, watching her from the depths of the past. As she moved through the rooms, Olga noticed a small storage room at the far end of the house. The door was tightly shut, almost blending into the wall. She tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. She had to exert effort to move the rusted lock. The creak of old hinges echoed through the house, making Olga jump. Behind the door was not just a storage room, but a room full of books. From floor to ceiling, shelves stood filled with volumes of various sizes and colors. Some books were bound in leather with gold tooling, others in simple paper covers. The room was hidden so skillfully that it could easily be mistaken for a regular pantry. There were no windows in the room, but it was not without ventilation, having small openings that provided a constant airflow and prevented moisture buildup. Olga froze on the threshold, stunned by what she saw. She had never known her grandmother to have a library, let alone such a vast one. She had always pictured her grandmother as a simple village woman, busy with household chores. But this library spoke of something else: intellect, education, and a passion for knowledge. She stepped inside and ran her hand along the spines of the books. Her fingers felt the roughness of old leather and the smoothness of paper. The scent of old books was intoxicating. It transported Olga to another world, a world of knowledge and discovery. Olga had never been an avid reader, but now in this room, she felt an irresistible desire to learn what lay hidden behind these covers. Some books were in Russian, others in foreign languages. Olga recognized French and German, which she had learned in school, and was surprised to find several volumes in Latin and ancient Greek. She picked up one of the leather-bound books and opened it. The pages were yellowed with age, but the text remained clear and legible. It was an ancient history book, published in the 15th century. Olga spent several hours in the library, examining the books and trying to understand how her grandmother had managed to assemble such a collection. She felt that this library was not just a collection of books, but a part of her heritage, a key to understanding her family and herself. It was a hidden treasure that her grandmother had left specifically for her. Seeking a way to learn more about this library, Olga began to explore the rest of the house. The cellar turned out to be large and dry, which was surprising for an old house. She descended the creaking stairs and looked around. In the corner, she noticed something covered by an old tarp. With curiosity, she approached and pulled back the fabric. Beneath it was an old metal safe. The safe was massive and imposing, with a combination lock. Olga tried to open it, but unsuccessfully. She didn't know the code and had no idea what might be inside. The safe seemed like another mystery for her to unravel. Suddenly, a thought struck her. Grandma always remembered the birthdays of all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It was her little quirk. Olga decided to try entering her own birth date. She typed in the numbers and heard a click. The safe opened. Inside lay old letters, photographs, documents, and notebooks. Everything was neatly stacked and tied with ribbon. Olga felt her heart beat faster. She knew she had found something very important, something that could change her life. First, she picked up the letters. From her grandmother's letters, Olga learned about her true role in the family as an heir in spirit. Grandma explained why her brother had received the apartment. He was distant from the family and didn't appreciate it. The documents confirmed that some of the books had cultural and monetary value. Among the archives were photos of a young Olga with her grandmother. Closeness, trust, love. For the first time in a long time, tears appeared in Olga's eyes, not from resentment, but from realization. With trembling hands, Olga unfolded the first sheet of yellowed paper. The scent of antiquity, the scent of her grandmother, hit her nose, bringing a pang of pain to her chest. The handwriting was familiar, neat, with a slight slant to the right. She remembered it from childhood, when Grandma taught her to write letters in a thick notebook with diagonal lines. Hello, Olenka, my dear granddaughter. If you are reading this letter, it means I am already far away, in a better world. And you are probably wondering why everything turned out the way it did. Why Anton has a large apartment, and you an old house in a remote village. Olga froze as if struck by electricity. Her grandmother seemed to be reading her thoughts, knowing her resentment and disappointment. Tears welled up, but she held them back, greedily absorbing every word. Believe me, the decision was not easy. I thought for a long time about how to act fairly, how to provide for both of you. But over time, I realized that fairness is a relative concept, and that true inheritance is not money and property, but memory, history, and connection to roots. Grandma wrote that Anton had always been distant from family values. He was interested only in material wealth, career, and success in the big city. The apartment in the capital, in Maria Stepanovna's opinion, would give him the start he needed to achieve his goals. She foresaw that he would most likely sell it, but that was his choice, his path. And you, Olenka, Grandma continued, you are different. You have always been closer to the earth, to nature, to history. Did you feel a connection to the past, to our ancestors? Do you remember how we used to read old books together? How I told you about our family, about those who lived here before us? I saw in you that spark, that love for your homeland, which is capable of preserving and multiplying our heritage. Olga swallowed the lump in her throat. She truly remembered those evenings when Grandma, sitting in her rocking chair by the fireplace, read her fairy tales and stories from ancient books. She remembered the smell of old paper, the quiet rustle of pages, the warmth of her grandmother's hands. In those moments, she felt safe, surrounded by love and care. Grandma wrote further that the house in Zaraki was not just an old building needing repair. It was a symbol of their family, their history, their roots. Her ancestors had lived within these walls. They had been born and died here, loved and suffered. The memory of them was kept in this house. Their spirit, their energy. The library you found is my pride and my sorrow, Maria Stepanovna wrote. I collected these books all my life, cherished them, dreamed that they would fall into the hands of someone who could appreciate their true value. I know you can do it, Olenka. You will feel their soul. You will understand their meaning. In the next letter, Grandma described in detail where to find documents confirming the value of the books. She pointed to ancient catalogs, expert opinions, and letters from renowned bibliophiles and historians. She also warned of the potential difficulties associated with valuing and selling the books and advised seeking professional help. Olga proceeded to examine the documents. Among the yellowed sheets, she found old deeds of sale, donation certificates, and wills. One of them mentioned that some of the books in the library belonged to a renowned noble family who owned these lands even before the Revolution. Another document testified that several books had been gifted to the library by Emperor Alexander II himself. Gradually, Olga began to grasp the scale of her inheritance. It was not just a collection of old books. It was a true treasury of immense cultural and historical value. And this treasury now belonged to her. But most touching were the photographs. In one of the old albums, she found many pictures of herself, little Olya, with her grandmother Maria Stepanovna. Here they were walking in the forest, gathering mushrooms and berries. Here they were sitting on the riverbank, fishing. Here they were baking pies in the kitchen, laughing and talking. In one of the photographs, Olga saw herself as a very small child, about 5 years old, sitting on her grandmother's lap and listening intently as she read her a fairy tale. Her face showed delight and wonder. Her eyes held boundless love and trust, and on her grandmother's face was tenderness and care. At that moment, Olga broke down. She could no longer hold back her tears. They streamed down her cheeks, hot and abundant, washing away resentment, disappointment, and insecurity from her soul. These were tears not of despair, but of realization. Realization that she was not alone, that she had roots, that she had a family, that she had a grandmother who loved her and believed in her. She understood that her grandmother had left her not just a house and a library. She had left her love, her wisdom, her faith. She had left her the key to her own heart, to her own soul. Olga wiped away her tears and looked at the photographs again. Now she saw in them not just images, but reflections of her own story, her own destiny. She understood that her place was here, in this old house, in this quiet village. Here she would find herself. Here she would find meaning in life. Here she would be happy. Olga firmly decided she would not sell the house. This thought had taken root in her soul like a strong tree, pushing out doubts and fear. She would stay here in Zarichi, breathe life back into the old walls, restore the house to its former glory, and do it not for money, not for revenge on her brother, but for herself, for the little girl who trustingly clung to her beloved grandmother in the yellowed photographs. First, Olga began searching for a restorer. The local residents, initially wary of her, gradually began to warm up, seeing her sincere desire to breathe life into the abandoned house. Old Agafia, whose house stood closest to Olga's, gave her the phone number of a craftsman from the neighboring village, Ivan. "Golden hands," she praised, "and he treats old things with soul." Ivan turned out to be a man of few words, but he knew his craft. After inspecting the house, he shook his head. "A lot of work, but the house is sturdy. It will stand for a long time." Olga sighed with relief. They agreed on a price and time frame. Ivan promised to start in a week. The next step was to appraise the library. Olga understood that she couldn't assess the value of the books herself, so she decided to contact specialists. She found several antique salons in Moscow online. She sent them photographs of the most interesting specimens. The response came unexpectedly quickly. One of the salons expressed interest in the collection and offered to send an expert for an on-site appraisal. The expert arrived 2 days later. A young man with glasses, who introduced himself as Kirill, carefully examined the library, leafed through books, and jotted notes in his notebook. Olga watched him with bated breath. Finally, Kirill looked up and smiled. "You have a real treasure trove here," he said. "Some of these books are unique specimens." Olga barely suppressed a gasp. "For example, this one." Kirill pointed to an ancient leather-bound book with a coat of arms. "In this condition, it's a great rarity." "And how much might it be worth?" Olga dared to ask. Kirill paused. "It's hard to say exactly, but I think not less than a 3-room apartment in the capital," he replied, looking Olga directly in the eyes. Olga's heart pounded. One book. And how many more were in the library? The realization of the value of her inheritance filled her with awe and delight. Kirill offered Olga his help in appraising and selling the books. He spoke of auctions, private collectors willing to pay large sums for rare specimens. Olga thanked him, but asked for time to think. She hadn't yet decided what to do with the library. Sell everything at once or gradually, or perhaps create a museum in the house. That same day, Olga decided to contact the son of her grandmother's friend, Uncle Petya, who was mentioned in one of the letters. She found his phone number in an old notebook found in the safe. Uncle Petya was very happy to receive the call. He remembered Olga as a little girl. He remembered her grandmother, Maria Stepanovna. "I always knew there was something special about this house," he said. "Your grandmother was a wise woman. She always said that true wealth is not money, but memory." Olga told Uncle Petya about the library, the letters she found, and her plans to restore the house. He listened attentively, then offered his help. Although I live far away, I am always ready to offer advice, he said. I have connections. I can introduce you to the right people. Suggest how to properly handle the paperwork. Olga was grateful to Uncle Petya for his support. She felt that she was not alone in this endeavor, that she had an ally who shared her love for family history. That evening, the phone rang. It was Anton. "Oh, hi," she heard his voice. "How are you?" "In the sticks. Everything's fine, Anton," Olga replied calmly. "How's your apartment?" "Everything's fine," Anton replied evasively. "Listen, I was thinking, maybe we shouldn't have argued about the inheritance back then. Maybe we should trade? You give me your house, and I'll give you my apartment." Olga chuckled. "You know, Anton, I've also done a lot of thinking," she replied, "and I've come to the conclusion that I'm perfectly happy with things as they are. I like the house." "But there's nothing there," Anton exclaimed indignantly. "It's some kind of wreck." "But there is something there that is far more valuable than any apartment," Olga replied. "Memory, history, and I'm not going to trade that for anything." Silence hung on the line. Anton apparently hadn't expected such an answer. "Well, as you wish," he grumbled finally. "Just don't complain later that I didn't warn you." "I won't," Olga replied firmly and hung up. She looked out the window. It was dark outside. The house was quiet and cozy. The logs in the fireplace crackled, casting whimsical shadows on the walls. Olga felt a new, unfamiliar feeling filling her, a sense of inner freedom, self-confidence, pride in herself and her family. She no longer felt deprived, unhappy, or abandoned. She was the mistress of her destiny, the mistress of her home, the mistress of her inheritance, and she knew she would handle whatever lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, Olga smiled sincerely and from the heart. She rose from her chair, went to the window, and looked at the starry sky. It seemed to her that up there, among the stars, she saw the smile of her grandmother Maria Stepanovna, and that smile gave her the strength to move forward. Olga returned to the fireplace, picked up one of the ancient books, and opened it to the first page. She began to read, and with each line she read, she delved deeper into the world of the past, into the world of her family, into a world that she was only now beginning to understand and appreciate. She felt an interest in history, literature, and art awakening within her. She understood that her grandmother had left her not just a house and a library, she had left her the key to self-discovery, to finding herself, and Olga was ready to use that key. Olga will remain in Zareki. She will restore the house, delve into the library's archives, and uncover everything about her lineage, ultimately finding her contentment. This was her own volition. She held a firm conviction that it was the correct path, as it stemmed from her heart's deepest desires. Olga closed the tome, extinguished the lamp, and retired for the night. Sleep claimed her swiftly and soundly. Her dreams were filled with her grandmother, smiling and whispering, "My dear Olenka, I always believed in you. You can achieve anything." And Olga believed it. She truly felt she could accomplish anything, for now she possessed a purpose that eclipsed all else in importance. The subsequent morning, Olga awoke with a profound sense of lightness and joy. She stepped outside and inhaled the crisp, rural atmosphere. The sun shone with radiant brilliance, and birds chirped their cheerful melodies. The world around her appeared revitalized and splendid. Olga smiled. She was happy, and this was merely the genesis of her journey.